Hey everyone, it's Friday night, so it's Weekender time, and if it's Weekender time, it's time to give away an awesome prize. This week, we've put together a bundle for World War III Team Yankee consisting of the new American hardback book and the new American plastic set, stuffed full of tanks, choppers, and Humvees. What more could you want? If you want to win this bundle, like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for an extra chance to win, come on over to OnTableTop.com and comment on the video there too. Right, the weekend starts now. Yeah, indeed, it is Weekender time. I'm Lloyd, and this week I'm joined by Ben and Jerry. Ben and Jerry. There's no big man this week.
Hola.
He's still off roaming about.
He's still on holiday, gallivanting around Ireland somewhere.
Sunning himself.
Gallivanting from his living room to his garden.
Oh, there you go. So that's not too bad. I thought he was doing the whole man in a van thing. Or is
I
he not doing that?
have no idea if he's done the man in the van thing.
To be fair, the weather hasn't really been appropriate for man in a van anywhere.
Yeah, that's it.
Drive to somewhere and then look out of the van and go, yeah, and it's all rain going on there.
Isn't that a typical British holiday, though? In reality?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
It's very close to Father's territory at that point.
But because he has his own garden jacuzzi, I think he's basically recreating Benidorm in the back garden.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've ever watched Benidorm,
has he got some
sun
sun lamps on or something in the background? Yeah.
Just before we get stuck into the show this week, we've got a bit of housekeeping. Okay, so you will have seen over the last few Weekenders, peeps, that we are giving away the Indomitus box. We're going to pick a winner for that next week. So if you haven't got your comments in on the other three Weekenders, now is your chance to go and get a comment in that, because the Indomitus box is like hen's teeth to get at the minute. But we'll talk more about that later when we get stuck into the news. If you didn't see it last week, remember that we did the hobby challenge stuff. Yes. Ben and Jerry took us through all the entries that were really cool. We had runners up and winners. And we had a voucher, 50 quid left over that you could win by commenting. So if you haven't done that, hop over to that video, get a comment in for 50 quid you can spend in the OTT store on really cool stuff. It was really epic, the stuff that we've seen last week, gents, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic stuff. Yeah.
There was a ton of projects that were excellent that never even made it to that list. So it's worth ferreting around in the project system just to see what else is in there.
Exactly.
Nuggets.
Yeah. Come on.
It's going to be really fun checking it out next year as well when we're on another one. Hopefully.
Yeah, will it be bigger and better next week or next year? So come on over to OnTableTop.com. Hit the projects button, have a browse in there. And if you haven't made a project, come on over and try it out and make a project. And then when we do the next prize like that, you're well set up to get stuck in. You know how it all works. Right. But this week, remember, we're giving away that Team Yankee bundle, the American box and the book. So get your comments in below for that. Like the video, subscribe, all that goodness. And if you're enjoying what we do here at On Tabletop, share the love, share the videos on Facebook, Reddit. What's the other one called? Twitter. I always forget about
Lloyd has his finger on the pulse of modern society and the internet. So.
I'm still putting up flyers in the local library.
Yeah, that's it. I'm still taking numbers off flipping leaflets going, oh, here's a number I can call.
Yep.
See, the best thing to do is if, say, something comes up in the news or we talk about an indie of the week that you like, there are loads of Facebook groups out there for all these different games and stuff. So go and share the Weekender in there and just, give us a thumbs up. Pretty awesome.
Absolutely. It really helps out disseminate the show because it's just like getting noticed on YouTube, getting through the algorithms. It's like you got to be an algorithm ninja these days to get anywhere. But if we can have it,
that's going to be clipped out and used all over the internet. You realize that, don't you?
Ninja boy.
One step away from Star Wars, kid.
Right. Yeah, absolutely right. So, fellas, let's get stuck into this show. We're going to start off with an indie of the week. Well, who are we doing? Who is doing the week?
Moonstone.com.
Ooh.
They don't just.
Well, yeah. So this is Goblin King Games, who make, as Jerry correctly and very rhythmically said, Moonstone. Jerry's going to take us
with Moon Pig then, which is all
exactly. Yeah, don't confuse the two.
Similar but different.
But yeah, we talked about these guys a couple of weeks ago, just sort of offhand about their new stuff that they brought out. But we thought it would be really awesome to dive back in, and Jerry's going to take us through their wonderfully whimsical and fantastical world of awesomeness that they've been working on for a little while now. So
yeah. Jerry, where do you want me to start, mate? I'm going to bring it up.
You bring it up, and we shall meander wherever we will. First off, Moonstone is a fantasy skirmish game, and it is truly whimsical. It's in the Brian Froud, Jim Henson style of goblins and fairies and humans. So it's incredibly fantastical, and you've got these unusual forces. So there are different ways you can get into the game. That little starter set is particularly good. It comes with a little mini rule book and all the tokens and bits and pieces you need to play. But it is just the rules, essentially. There is a hardback book as well, which gives you the history of the worlds of Moonstone. So you discover that the fairies are incredibly powerful, but they were sort of pushed to the brink when the humans managed to get everybody else on board in a massive war and sort of cripple them. So there's this uneasy alliance now between the various factions. Yeah. And the factions themselves are split into the Dominion. So you can see there.
Hold on, let me go back to where I was, if I can figure out where I was.
I've no idea where you were.
Here we go. So we have, is this all the factions then?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
So where you had been, there were two main factions. So you see on the Enclave box, there's like a moon on the left-hand side of the box. You've got essentially the Dominion and the Commonwealth, and some things can come from either. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, all humans are not all members of one faction. Yeah. Not all goblins and fauns and undead and beasts are members of one faction. The factions are split, so you can assemble forces depending on what they're aligned to. So you can have the Commonwealth or the Dominion, or then there's essentially mini factions as well, like the Chivalry.
Okay, so we've got humans, goblins, gnomes, fairies.
Yes.
And
so if you think of races and factions as two totally different things.
So they don't all just club together like for like then?
No, in some cases they will, and so they'll be very focused. But they've expanded on that, and as they've expanded, they've broke things down a bit more so that there are more crossover amongst them. So where you see things like that big shiny face of the sun there, that is the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth, so depending on that symbol tells you what faction they're aligned to.
Right, okay, so this is making more sense because you were talking about the moon, and I was like, I don't know what you mean about the moon, right? So there's the sun here.
So the sun there and the moon
these guys, there's sun, but they've got a moon, right? Okay. Yeah. So that's how you so there's two main sort of opposing
there were two main opposing factions, but they have expanded on that with some of the recent Kickstarters and additional things. But it's a really interesting game because you play on a 3x3 table, so it's very small, and it's very almost RPG-like in the setup and how it plays. But the whole premise is there is a tower in the world with a wizard in it. Nobody knows how long he's been there. Nobody knows who he is. It's entirely possible he is some sort of godlike being. But what they do know is that he really likes these moonstones that only crop up at night.
Right.
And so the fights are amongst the various groups. You put together a troop of characters, and the troops are trying to get the moonstones. So these are the clashes that happen when two groups get together and go on essentially a raid. Mickey Bobby is an unusual fellow there. But it's the mechanics. Grub.
Yeah,
Grub's an unusual goblin. Let's put it like that. He does have a bug sprayer. I don't know why, but he does.
There's that whimsical edge coming in. So.
Yeah. But the mechanics themselves, it is not a dice-driven game. There are D4 in the starter set, but the D4 are your Moonstones. And essentially, when you've set up your table and you've chose your table sides, you lift your handful of D4 up and you drop them. And wherever they fall, that's a Moonstone sticking its head out. And whatever number is on the dice tells you how deeply it is buried. And you have to try and dig them out and get them back. But that's the only time you're going to roll dice in this. Everything else works off these cards they have. So you can see an example there of.
Hold on, I'll get you on.
Well, that's fine. Yeah,
Well,
you'll
I
find one at
lost
the
it.
bottom of each of the pages.
All right, here's a bunch of cards.
There are a bunch of cards. So
obviously not this page.
you're a click monster. There we go. So you can see there the breakdown of a card that tells you things like their melee 2 and their arcane 5. Those are the amount of cards you'll draw when you're going to do something, when you're going to do an attack or a spell, for example, or an ability. You've got all their abilities next, things like slow, predictable, ramshackle armor, so on and so forth. And at the bottom, you have your health. And the health.
Down here, is it?
Yeah. The health also has blue circles, and the blue circles are your activations or the amount of things you can do in a turn. So as you get injured, you'll drop down. So you can take, in this case, Fire Spitter can take 3 before it hits the first blue pip. After it's taken 4 wounds, it will then only have 2 activations or 2 abilities per activation.
We're starting here and working our way down then. So what happens then? So you work through the first 3 and then you hit the blue pip, and that means
so those are how many actions you can take during a turn. So as you become more wounded, you'll get less actions, and depending on the character, they could have them stacked towards one end or the other. So you'll find some very brutal big things may have all of them at the very end, so they can take a ton of damage without limiting their effectiveness. Other ones may be quite fragile and have them stacked towards the right hand side. So there's a lot going on with that.
And then and then as soon as it hits this, I've gone from 3 actions down to 2.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, yeah, once you're past it.
Yeah. Wound. So I then another wound. That's when I lose that action then. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I totally get what you're saying about if we take all of these blues and put them at that end of the spectrum, you've got to keep going and going and going before any impact really kicks in.
Yeah, and it's a very nice way of doing it. It's very easy to follow. You can pick up a card, you can look at it and go, over there, they're this type of character. They're going to take this damage before this sort of hits in. I will got my deck of cards here. So
here's one here. Here's Grandma. Yeah. She doesn't have that many wounds, but they're all stacked towards one side.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see they've got like a signature move on a low guard. So there's actually a set of cards that are based on the HEMA, so the historical European martial arts style of fighting. So it's a deck of 18 cards, and you've got things like thrust, low guard, high guard, sweeping cut, so on and so forth. So when you come to fight, so if we take Mama and then Quarrel below as examples, the attacker gets their melee scoring cards. So these are never dice, it's always cards, +2 because they're attacking. So she would get 4 cards, and then if you scroll slightly down so I can see Quarrel's card, he would get 3 for defense. So you would pull out whatever these happen to be, make your hand, and then you choose one, and then you reveal them at the same time. So if, for example, you pulled out a thrust, a low guard, a high guard, and a rising attack, you would pick the one that works best based on what you think your opponent is good at or what he's got in his hand, because there are certain things where it tells you if you've picked a high guard and your opponent's picked a rising attack, then they will do so much damage to you and you'll do so much damage back to them. If you've got multiple of the same cards, before you start calculating damage, you can play them. So because there's 3 of each in the deck that you're drawing from, they become critical attacks, so you can play 3 at once. So if your opponent has played a card that's particularly bad against your attack, you can go, well, I've got another 2 of those. I'll throw those in, and I'm going to do 3 times the damage on that. So the card mechanic in this game is integral because it's very much about bluff and about playing the best hand that you can. And Magic is the same. When you're drawing cards, you put it down, but you tell your opponent what it is. So the
Yeah.
cards are color coded, sort of blue, purple, and green. And then there's a couple of catastrophe cards as well. So you would go, I'm going to do this ability. I'm going to cast a fireball or an explosion or whatever it happens to be. You put the card down, you go, that's a blue 3.
Is
But your
this the
opponent
sort,
also,
is this the sort of cards we're looking for here?
those are those are the character cards.
I got cards galore here.
Yeah, but they're all character cards. If you were to go back to the starting box set that you were looking at earlier, I have no idea where you've
I have
gone.
no idea.
You jump around so much. You're a little jumpy monkey.
This one here.
There we go. There. So is the Moonstone card deck? No. Well, that will have it in it if you scroll down.
What about this?
Yeah, you. There we go. You're
Little
bang on the
boo.
money now. Don't click anything. Stay on that. Don't scroll. Stop scrolling. You see you're scrolling. So you see the cards in the top right there.
Yeah.
Which are coloured, and then you've got a catastrophe as well. I could throw a card down and go, I'm going to do this ability, and that's a green 2.
Yeah.
And your opponent has to decide whether that you're bluffing or that you're telling the truth. It might be because there's only 1 3 card in each of the coloured sets. If you go, I've got a purple 3, and your opponent's got the purple 3, then he knows you're bluffing and he can call you on it. Ooh. If you call somebody on the card that they've placed and they were telling the truth, if I happen to say green 2 and it was green 2, because you went, I think you're lying, I get to cast the spell again on another target. So you can't just go, I'm always going to bluff. If he bluffs, and he got it,
I would be terrible
right.
at this game.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Because
if he gets it right, then he chooses one of the cards he's got. So you're maybe doing 3 damage because you were going, it's a blue 3, and you go, actually no, it's 1 damage.
Yeah.
Or ideally catastrophe, and all of the spells have a little paragraph going, if a catastrophe is played, then something terrible happens. Instead of exploding somebody else, you explode like a little nova and deal damage to all your friends. So the bluff and counter bluff working through both the combat and the magic phase just is really neat. It's cute.
Yeah, I would be terrible at this because I'd always bluff and I'd always say, you're full of crap, let me see your card. I would just lose
and then all of a sudden everybody gets shot in the face repeatedly. So it's nice because it has a very narrative feel, and it gets you engaged with your opponent. You're not just going,
really cool.
This miniature has 20 dice, and therefore I'm going to stomp about with my 20 dice attack until I've rolled enough dice to make everybody at the table feel nauseous. And you're going, well, I've got this model and they're really good at this, and then your opponent's going, well, does he have that massive damage? Or because you never reveal if your opponent doesn't call you on it, you could be going, I'm going to do 3 damage to you because I've got that 3, and it might just be a little 1 card, and they go, okay, and let it through.
Look at these guys.
You do the damage.
I love
they are fairies.
They're losing
all
actions
the fairies and the
straight away.
So the Fae are an incredibly good faction. They were for a long time in the history of the world holding back everybody, and it wasn't until they all combined together and attacked the Fae en masse that they were actually able to do any damage, because fairies in myth are always terrible people to come up against with far more powers. And the models as well, because we haven't really talked about the models.
The
models are absolutely stunning.
That's why fairy trees never get touched.
Yeah, no, you've got to stay away from the fairy. You do not want to mess with the she.
Yeah, there's a fairy tree in my hometown of Macrocosm, and people have died when they've tried to cut it down. Heart attacks there on the spot, died. There's fairy trees down south, and they've built entire motorway like diversions around.
Goes around it. Yep.
Because them fairies, you gotta watch them.
Yeah,
you do. You really do have to watch them.
In terms of the miniatures and stuff for the game, are they 28 mil or are they slightly bigger than that? Are they like
they're closer to sort of 35. They are robust now. I say that when you look at things like the fairies, they're probably closer to 28 mil. But they are very small in comparison to the humans that are kicking around. And then there are some massive beasts as well. So you've got trolls and giants. Brunhilde, herself is a big giant. She's a huge lass. Excuse me. If you go to the shop, there's a whole new range that haven't made it onto this part yet. So if you go to the online shop,
now. Shop.moonstonethegame.com.
So you can either go into new releases or just scroll down a little bit, but you can see there the sort of size comparison of them.
Oh, hold on. Yeah,
So,
let's go back. Oh, there you go.
So you can see the fairy, while being quite large, is very finely detailed.
Still smaller in proportion
to the
humans and stuff, yeah.
And that is one of the larger ones because some of them are very, very fine and sort of hovering or peeking around branches and that sort of thing. But they've got this new range now. So this is what we'd been looking at a few weeks ago,
Cursed,
which is the Cursed and the End Is Now, which are essentially horrific, as in horror film type things. So you've got Strigoi vampires, you've got Revenant, so undead are there. You've got the Beast, which is obviously a very Beauty and the Beast style thing. It's not a werewolf because there are werewolves, but he's an unusual gentleman anyway. Probably with a good library though, so that's not bad. And again, you can see these can be used as a new faction of their own, or some of them can also be used. As you can see, the Grinning Moon in the top of this card, they could be mixed in with the goblins to give you a different way of playing the Dominion faction. So you've got varieties as time goes on, as more stuff is released. There's more of a blend in it.
This one here, for example, doesn't have anything.
It doesn't, but if you scroll up slightly,
does that mean it can't be used?
It's attached to the
if you scroll up slightly,
all right, I see.
That is her until she takes her necklace off, and when she takes her necklace off, she goes wrong until she puts that necklace back on again. So you can't take one without t'other in that case.
Well, necklaces, they drive people crazy. Like on Titanic, when she pushes him to his death just so she can have a necklace.
And then she forces all those people to spend all that money looking for that necklace, despite the fact it's in her pocket. And at the end, she chucks it in when they're leaving because she's vindictive.
Can you believe it?
So vindictive.
She's like, if anybody's going to come to give me any crap about this, there it was all along. You just missed it. Gee whiz.
Giving up the search, going home. Well, maybe you'll find it next time.
Yeah, so they sold out the Cursed.
They have. These were leftover versions from the Kickstarter. Once the Kickstarter had been fulfilled recently, so they will be coming back in. So there are some that are available simply because they had extra done in case of damage and breakages and that sort of thing. But as you can see from the renders, they are gorgeous, and I will say they're cast resin, and every one I've had has matched the renders perfectly. The quality of the actual miniatures are stunning. Wendigos.
Sweet. Very cool. And great minis, even if you're not going to play that game. Like great minis to pick up for the collection or to put into other games.
Yeah, picking up just to paint is perfect because they are. Everyone is beautifully characterful.
Look at the amount of wounds on this guy.
Yeah, not particularly fast, but you don't have to be fast when you're an armored troll or ogre with a goblin firing a cannon from your head. It's just what they do. Just what they do.
Sweet.
It's Moonstone. Thing of beauty.
Right, chaps. That's really cool stuff. Moonstone.com, is it? Moonstone.com. Right. Let's go and get stuck into the news.
Coming to you from the center of Northwestern Europe. Covering board games, war games, card games, and all that you love. It's the news.
Well, the first bit of news is also something that we can give out to you wonderful folks in the tabletop community who like shopping with us at store.ontabletop.com. And that is that Indomitus has been so popular, or maybe it was planned from the start, that it is now on made to order with Games Workshop. So for a still limited time, you'll be able to get in there and pre-order Indomitus, and it will be delivered not necessarily during that first window of opportunity for Engage Workshop, but at least by the end of 2020.
Yeah.
So some very cool stuff on that front.
What happened is it flew off the shelves and went ping, 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 gone. And then GW went, oh, maybe we didn't make enough of this after all.
Maybe we should.
We'll get a list of people together who actually want it, and then we'll make them. So if you put your name in, you get one. Apparently that's the way it's going to work. At this time of filming, I checked it just before we come on. Like, if you're quick, you might get one. You might, because at this time we've got 5 sitting here in stock, ready to go. 5 in stock. Probably by the time this is out, none of these 5 will be here anymore. And if that is the case, like Ben has said, there is this other product then that you can, if you order it, you then put on a list, and the list is sent to Games Workshop, and they'll manufacture them as needed.
Yep.
So,
just in time for Christmas.
Like I said, if you're quick, this one's really cool too, because if you're quick, you can get like a £20 voucher to spend on your next.
You can indeed, yes.
Order of over 100 quid. This one's good too, because we're still getting a discount on this, but you'll have to wait to like the late 2020 is the estimated delivery date.
The thing that I think should be sort of bared in mind when it comes to ordering this as well is that even if you do end up missing out on it, the big thing you're sort of trying to get within that set is that sort of like luxury limited edition rulebook. And I'm sure the plastic sets are going to be still a long way off anyway, but that's obviously one of the things you've got to think about with this. So don't worry too much. We'll be okay.
What are you talking about? Everyone wants that new box smell.
I know they do. I know they do. And it would be nice to have it all in one package, obviously, which is also good. So,
that's why you need to go and comment on those weekenders.
Yes.
A winner next week.
Exactly.
That could be your way of getting a box. Yeah. So
and that'll be shipped off to you sooner rather than later.
Yeah. It pretty much sold out everywhere, like lickety split.
And if you're interested in what's actually in that set, Justin did an unboxing last week of it, so you can go and check that out. We'll have the link in the show notes. And also, I believe, word on the grapevine is that John may be doing some painting tutorials for them as well. Cool. So there'll be a little bit of a look at doing some Space Marines and some Necrons in the future as well, so keep an eye out for that too.
Well, let's see. Here is the box set. Where's this book that you were talking about, Ben? Oh, it's this big, thick book.
That's the big, thick, limited edition cover version of it that'll be coming out, yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. That is a big fancy book, isn't it?
Foreign languagey.
Yeah.
Some sort of French version.
If you guys can hear banging at home, I think Ben, you got visitors banging on your flipping walls or something.
Apparently, it's the debtors. They've come to break my legs. So, yeah.
Oh well, no box of Indomitus for you then.
Try and buy them off with tiny fighting men.
What is it?
How you deal with the debt collectors.
There's some guy on a scaffolding outside your window peering in at you or something.
There is, yes, which is wonderful.
Bang, bang, bang. So if you hear any weird banging, it's Ben's neighbor.
Yep, it'll be fine. I'll just talk over them. This will be the way forward.
Right. What else came up in the news this week, fellas?
So next up in the news, there's some new stuff of Blood Red Skies. So Warlord Games are getting stuck back into the production of new stuff for their games. And the recent additions were 2 new ace pilots and also 2 new sets of plane squadrons for you to use for both the Soviets and the Germans. Now, for the Soviets, you've got Marina Dolina, who is one of the female pilots from the collection. I don't know why she had an Italian accent then. But, she flew in over 200 combat special missions and ran 72 successful bombing campaigns throughout the Northern Caucasus, the Kuban, Crimea and Kursk, Belarus and the Baltic.
Cool.
She even managed to survive through to the end of the war and continued to fight for the Soviets into the 1970s, if you can believe that. So a pretty fantastic individual, all things considered, there for the Soviets. And they did like to have some pretty badass females in their army, which is very cool.
Sweet. And then for who's this?
Yeah. So we've got Walter Borscher, who is the other ace pilot, and these both link into the 2 squadron sets that you'll see below. They're basically named pilots for each of these different squadrons. But Borscher flew many missions throughout France and Britain during the war, and then actually became involved in the sort of night fighting style of fighting fighting during World War II in 1943. He was credited with taking down several 4-engine heavy bombers and had many victories throughout the 40s. One of the cool things as well is that he obviously was one of these pioneers of that kind of night fighting style of engagements, and he was a seriously deadly individual. He did, however, die. He met his end at Altenburg when he was shot down and killed by a mosquito night fighter. So not quite good enough, eh?
Should have had his brother, Adolf.
Oh.
That would have been more interesting.
Oh.
Especially because he fought on the Eastern Front.
Yeah.
There were 3 Butcher brothers, 2 were pilots. All 3 of them won the Knight's Cross
cool.
version of the Iron Cross. But his brother, I think, is more interesting as far as ace pilot. I think he had got more kills. That one has a slightly higher Knight's Cross or Iron Cross. He got Iron Cross without bleeds because he's dead. His brother didn't die. So obviously he didn't get a posthumous upgrade to his medal. His brother survived the war. His brother fought in the Battle of Britain and Battle of France, was shot down in the Channel, rescued, moved to the Eastern Front, and continued flying sorties against the Russians. So I think Adolf would have been a better choice for an ace pilot. And at some point, I hope they do, so you can have the brothers together, you know. I think they flew different planes, so it may just be the plane that they were aiming for and looking for a pilot
on a different plane. Yeah,
but when you've got a Russian squadron going out there, having a ace pilot who fought the Russians would have been slightly more sensible, as far as I'm concerned. That's just me, though. You know,
I did see a completely different bomber, but I did see like a video on YouTube a couple of weeks ago of like 2 American bombers, and they were in a raid. And then one got hit, and it crashed onto the top of another one.
Ooh.
Right? So they're literally on top of each other, but just placed just perfectly that the rotors are still sort of separate. But they were going down because like one of them was pretty stricken below, and it was taking the other one down. And then they like slapped into the ground. Like most of the people bailed out, at least the guys on the top. And the 2 pilots stayed. Like one pilot's like, "No, get out and I'll do it." And the other one's like, "No, I'll stay." So they both stayed and did it together. Everybody on the bottom plane got squished when they hit the ground, and the 2 pilots on top were fine. I should expect landing on top of another airplane, but you know.
It sounds very much like a Thunderbird's problem to be solved.
Yeah.
That does.
It really does. Somebody fetch me Thunderbird 2. Yeah. Fetch me Ian Tracy, the least like Tracy.
But yeah, so those 2 ace pilot sets then break down into, well, they're the sort of personalities within both the P3, I think it's called the
P2.
Yeah, the PE2 squadron, sorry, for the Soviets. Thank you for the correction there, Jerry. And the Junkers JU-88C squadron as well for the Germans there. So you've either got light bombers for the Soviets and heavy fighters and stuff for the Germans at the same time. So if you're someone who's been collecting up a lot of stuff for the Blood Red Skies range, this is now a new fantastic addition to this. They've already done things in the past for the mosquitoes and stuff, so the Allies have got their sort of night fighters too, which is very cool.
And there's a rule that if you can get your airplane across the table, that it gets crowned and another airplane gets sandwiched on the top of it.
You're not playing checkers.
You can turn back in with double the firepower. That's how that works, that game.
I love that you thought about that joke in the time it took me to come up with that a little bit of spiel for the end there. So that's good.
What do you mean a joke? That's the way it works. That's the way I'm going to play
it. Everything is scripted. Finest comedy gold.
Next up, then, gents, what have we got?
So next up is the folks at Archon Studio. So a lot of people remember we had a look at their stuff for Dungeons and Lasers back when it came out. I think it was last year now. It was in last year.
Oh, hello.
This is them returning to Dungeons and Lasers with Part 2, which is coming out as part of a Kickstarter at the end of August. As you can see there, 25th of August. The idea is they're going to be working on 3 new sort of integral sets of terrain. So they're going to be developing the Dwarven Mines, the Cursed Cathedral, and the Temple of the Operators. So there's 2 sets there that are very much heavily focused on the idea of fantasy, and then you can sort of like go sci-fi with the Temple of the Operators, and then maybe sci-fi with the Cursed Cathedral if you want to do something a little bit, grim, dark, and that kind of thing as well. All of this is done using their sort of like plastic kit thing, so you can bodge together all the walls and stuff in a modular style.
You could go sci-fi with all 3 of those kits easily enough.
You could do,
In
yeah,
fact,
if you wanted to.
you might have a harder time going fantasy with this because it looks like tubes and stuff.
Oh yeah. I'm saying that the Temple of the Operators was definitely the sci-fi kit, but the Cursed Cathedral could probably work for both, depending on how gothic you want it to be.
It was definitely grim dark, and then this is fine too. I wouldn't have a problem.
It could be a mine on some distant world, so it'd be good. Yeah,
full of Forge Fathers.
Yeah, but
pew.
as well as exactly. If you want to use it for a little bit of Warpath or something, that'd be good. But as with everything that these guys do, they're going to be coming up with a whole bunch of additional stuff throughout the Kickstarter campaign. They've already talked about lots of scatter terrain and that kind of thing, as you can see there. So there's loads of different options for kind of telling a little bit of a story and a narrative on the tabletop with the terrain.
Oh, I love the carts. That's
very
awesome.
Cool. You've got to have loads of those running around the board. That'd be very cool.
There used to be
Indiana Jones.
There used to be a theme park ride in the Pleasure Beach in Blackpool, which was all like dwarven mine stuff, and you used to go around it in like a mining cart. Oh, it was great. I could totally make that.
It's probably been shut down now.
It is. It's gone. It's been replaced with bloody Wallace and Gromit. The only good thing about Wallace and Gromit, we probably don't have access to the picture now, is the time me, Warren, and Justin went on Wallace and Gromit, and me and Justin cuddled in the back, and Warren sat in the front. But just the way the perspective of the camera worked when you take those pictures and then they show it to you at the end. We had to buy this because Warren was like 3 times bigger than the tiny me and Justin cuddling in the back. It was super funny looking.
It'll be out there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure we could find it. But anyway, as well as the terrain, they're also doing something a little bit special with this. Dragon. So yeah, they put together like a little bit of I think it was like a sort of like a poll saying what kind of crazy new thing could we add onto the Dungeons and Lasers Kickstarter next time we do it. And everyone was like, hey man, have you thought about doing dragons? And so they're going to be doing 4 different dragons. But I've kind of broken them down into the kind of their D&D classifications. Yeah. So you've got sort of a red, black, a green, blue dragon, and then also a sort of like a Dracolich as well. So if you like dragons, I'm a big fan of them. Then there's some very awesome plastic ones coming your way as part of this Kickstarter campaign at the end of August.
So, I was hoping for a Flight of Dragons song there from you.
I wish I could remember it properly for you. So
good old Brayog.
Gonna have to train those dragons now.
Yes. Yeah.
You child.
Oh God.
Talking about
summer child.
At least enjoyed the first movie.
I haven't seen them.
I
go for something from the 80s and you go for something from like last Wednesday as far as dragons go. Flight of Dragons is better. I say that having not seen what Training Your Dragon is about, but it's just better.
It's pretty obvious what Training Your Dragon is about. It's about training your dragon.
Yeah.
It's in the title, Jerry.
So how do you have 2? Why don't you trained it once?
Because they got another dragon to go and train.
Did it get amnesia?
They got to train him in the ways of love.
It's always amnesia.
They find like a girly dragon in the next one.
I can't believe you said you've got to train in the way of love. Not as good. No.
You got to do the birds and the bees of the dragon.
Oh dear. Oh, please don't. Just please don't.
Right.
Let's move on.
Next up, what are we going to talk about next?
Yeah, so talking of dragons, we also had another dragon previewed by the folks at Kurasan Miniatures.
More dragons!
So more dragons. So this is one that Warren was very excited about on social media. He was like, oh, sexy dragon.
That's even before we heard about the dragon love.
Exactly. So this is Vorago Draconis, which is their, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, biologically plausible dragon, which is meant for use in war games and role playing. The sort of base has been designed so that it isn't necessarily tied into the idea of it being like a hobby project or like a statue, for example. It's actually been designed so that it would kind of work on the tabletop, which I think is really cool. And it's done sort of like in this stalking forward pose. You'll get options as part of the resin kit to either have a set of sort of ridges on the back, sort of armored ridges, or the frills, as you can see there.
Oh, this is frills. I like the frill.
So that's the bit that's going to be sort of tweaked. It also has a barbed tail and obviously the horned head as well. But yeah, if you like the idea of, well, the sort of style and the aesthetic of the dragons from a Game of Thrones, and sort of what they did with dragons, this would be a pretty good option for you to include in your army. And because of those two different sort of neck armor options, you could also, maybe buy 2 of them and
It's
put them
this
into
one.
your force as well. So.
This is the option to go with, the frills. Because if you want to attract the lady dragons, waving your frill around like this is the way to go.
Stop it.
That would work.
That's quite interesting that they've gone with that as well. I'm ignoring what you're saying there, Lloyd. I don't want to hear about your dragon sexing. But a lot of Coruscant stuff is they mostly aim towards the 15, although they do have a 28mm range. So it's interesting. They've got, that's a 28 one, yeah. So it's a fairly substantial thing. I'd really like to see that with some 15mm miniatures.
So
I think it would work for both of them.
Definitely. Yeah. There's nothing on it that speaks that it's 28mm. So
what makes it? Yeah, it'd be great for 15 actually.
Yeah.
But what makes this like anatomically plausible then? Just the size of it compared to the 28mm, or the size of the wings compared to the body?
I think possibly the fact that the wings are its front legs, because normally when you see a Dragron, Dragrons normally have 4 legs and then a pair of wings stuck to the back, like they're hexapedal. Because as the sort of comments explode every single time we talk about dragons have 4 legs and wings.
Yes.
Wyverns, like this creature, have wings on their front legs and a barbed tail. Well, not necessarily a barbed tail, but a barbed tail. So it's technically a wyvern, or wyvern, however you want to say it. But all of them are drakes. So there you go. That's something to bear in mind.
There you go.
That's it. Yeah, you put the slap down on anybody who's going to complain.
There's the dropping the dragon mic. There we go.
Time. Forget all that. It's time for Drake Love. Yeah.
I think we should move on to the next news story. We also have some, not necessarily new stuff, but over the last couple of months, WWIII Games and Peter Dennis have been working together to create these flat pack armies that are done on plastic as Perspex armies. Mm-hmm. So all the illustrations from Peter Dennis are transferred onto their sort of plastic sheeting. And then effectively what you do when you get the set, you pop out the pieces, they're coloured front and back, stick them into little bases, and they are ready to go. The latest sort of selection of different sets that have come out throughout May through until now in July look at things like the Punic Wars, the Wars of Spanish Succession, the Texas Revolution, and the English Civil War. And the cool thing about all of these is they now also come with a PDF rules pack that allows you to play out those particular moments on the battlefield and those wars on the battlefield. So if you have ever struggled with the idea of getting into historical wargaming, effectively now these are your kind of like window into doing that. So you go out and you think, I want to play some Ancients, so I'm going to pick up the Punic Wars box set. Comes with all the miniatures you need to play, and then obviously the PDF to get you started as well, which is very cool.
I think it's fascinating. This when they initially launched the company on Kickstarter 2 years ago, I'm going to say. It might only have only been last year, but regardless. Part of the idea behind it was to introduce people to history. So it was literally called World of Fun, Bringing History into Your Home. I think it says on the box behind me, actually. Bring history into your home. But this is sort of part and parcel of that. The initial ranges they brought out were and are very, very nice, but these give you a starter set plus a rule set. So it's particularly good for people who don't know if they're going to be fully engaged with Ancients or historic gaming, especially if they're coming from a science fiction or fantasy background. And when you look at the range of games out there, I mean, if somebody goes, what game do you play Ancients with? They could be listing games from now till Christmas, and then at the end you could still be none the wiser. So if there's not a local club or already a Ancients or historic scene to play with, this is great, because you can literally pick these up, like you say, pop them out, do a bit of cleanup on them if you want, especially for the 18mm scale ones. I've seen people painting the edges because it's clear perspex. But once they're painted at 18mm scale, you'd be hard pressed to distinguish them from actual 18mm or 15mm figures. And price wise, they come in, they're cheaper. So you're getting them pre-painted for a little bit of a reduction. So the barrier to entry is really, really low with them. And
Well,
at the moment, it's covering multiple periods, and they can only go from there, really.
let me just clarify that when you say pre-painted, they're not actually painted. It's a printed
they're
texture that's then applied to.
Yeah, they're printed on
a C3 perspex, is it?
Yeah.
And does it come like that, and you literally just pop them out and stick them in?
Just pop them out of the plastic sheeting. Yep.
So your barrier to entry on terms of speed is tiny as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say take time with the pikes, because if you clip it too quickly, you could shatter those pikes because they are perspex. So take your time with those. You don't want to stress them, but they're a little bit more robust than the standard. So World of Fun do 2 sets. Essentially, they do their own range that they put through Kickstarter, which is extensive. I mean, it's massive. There's a huge variety of ancients and historic, but they're all individual figures. So it's, a sheet might have 24 guys on it. Then you're cutting out each of the individual guys. So like the Roman Hastati there are one of those. So if you're putting them onto a base, and it's actually a Peter Dennis one. Well, anyway, the 2 guys on the right, if you imagine all of the WoW Fun ones are like that. So if you want to have a rank of 3, you're clipping out 3. With Peter Dennis, he makes them, they're based for his Paper Soldier range, where you're cutting out essentially a wall of men.
Yeah.
So it's a bit faster to do, and it looks more regimented.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 very different styles, although they work very well together.
I can't find them. I went looking for more.
You're clicking all over the place.
I
can't work out where you're clicking. You're the king of clicks.
I'm still looking at Romans and stuff.
If you look for their Wild West, you'll find tons of stuff there. But they're very nice. We were talking about Legends of the Old West recently. Myself and Ben.
I don't know how this website works.
It's because you keep clicking on things.
I clicked it.
Once you reach a page, stay on that page.
Okay,
right?
I'm on this page.
Scroll down and see what it says on that page before you jump away again. You're so fast on clicking on things.
Or click through the images.
I'm gonna click through the images.
There we go.
Well done. So we were talking about Legends of the West. This range of Western fighters and mountain men with their dogs, and there's even a stagecoach, and they do terrain as well. So all of that terrain in the background, all come from them. So you could even use it for games like that,
the skirmish games,
because they do size them. You can have them as 15/18 mil or 28 mil.
Yeah.
So you
do you know what?
You can play anything with them.
I'm looking at the Native Americans and I'm thinking that's cool, right? As soon as I clicked over to these guys, I started thinking Westworld. Oh, you see this guy right here? I can't get Westworld out of my head now.
I know you're going full Yul Brenner.
That's it.
It's the way to do it.
Sweet.
Yeah. More of that, please. I really want Peter Dennis's Napoleonics.
Yeah. I think I said in the article, I was talking to Jerry before we started filming this as well. If they move over and do a plastic set of sort of Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, and Normans, I think I'd be well up for it. They've done them in paper form already before as part of like a little booklet you could buy for 1066.
Yes.
So that's obviously the paper craft stuff. So it'd be nice to see what they do with
it
the
would
plastics
be,
on that.
because if we look at the Romans here and just flick through the pictures, like a load of Saxons or something done in this style.
Yeah, with the proper shield walls
shield walling towards you
would be epic.
Yeah, they've already done sort of that kind of style of stuff anyway for like Battle Ravens, wasn't it? The one they did for PSC.
Well, this is it. They're not having to wait for Peter to do new stuff for them
because he's
already
drawn everything from all of history already.
Yeah. He's been doing this for years. So they're literally just going through it and going, "Oh, we'd like to do this now," and then getting the files off him and then essentially applying it to their machine.
This is a good example of the
reference pair.
Yeah. This is a good example of 2 different art styles here.
Yeah.
These guys compared to the Romans we were looking at, very different looking, aren't they?
Yeah. Peter does a lot of the Osprey illustrations, so it's a lot more realistic and sketch based because he sketches everything. He's only started doing digital. These are sort of more digital composites, I suppose.
Yep.
But depending on your point of view, either or both.
Sweet. Right, fellas. What's next?
So finishing off the news with some more stuff from the guys at Mantic Games. So a lot of people will know about their Terrain Crate, which was a series of effectively ready-to-go, almost, terrain that you could pop out in plastic and use on the battlefield for your fantasy games, that kind of thing. They've now taken to the post-apocalypse and also the modern day as well, I suppose you could say, with a new set of terrain that's going to be available this weekend. So from this Saturday, you'll be able to pick up sets which include, or at least pre-order sets, which include the hospitals, malls, offices, warehouses, and campsites collection, as well as an abandoned factory, which we'll see later as well. The whole idea of these is that they're a set of plastic pieces that usually come sort of pre-colored, I guess you'd say. So, for example, with the fantasy stuff, it was all brown, for example, so easily match with things if you wanted to just slap it down to the tabletop. And then you just get to work painting them up. They're incredibly nicely detailed, as you would imagine, for the guys at Mantic Games, and especially sort of fit within the wheelhouse of The Walking Dead. So if you're setting up lots of tabletops to fit that kind of tabletop game, then this would work for you. Of course, there's no reason, as I mentioned earlier, that you couldn't use these for slightly more modern warfare historical settings as well. So if you wanted to use this for the backdrop of one of your, engagements through the woods, or, fighting through an abandoned factory with your team of soldiers, you could also do that too. I think this stuff is really, really awesome. And it kind of does that thing that we talk about quite a lot when it comes to terrain, and that is the idea of it telling a story. So you've got little bits and pieces within these sets that immediately start to get your brain working in overtime in terms of like how things work on the tabletop and the setting and sort of what you're going to do with your characters. Like you could have some where you could push those clothes racks towards the zombies to try and stop them, that kind of thing. You have the fire from the campfire could be attracting the walkers towards you. You could do things with the hospital set, for example, where maybe in that, you've got that little surgical table with the samples on it. Maybe you need to get in there and steal that away before someone else does, who might be trying to use it for more nefarious means, for example, on tabletop.
Or maybe you're
really
injured
nice
and you have to go along with the dolly and drag that along with your character.
Exactly, that would be cool as well. Yeah.
It's really nice, this little incidental pieces of terrain, or gaming furniture, I suppose you would call it, because there are a lot of companies out there do varying types of terrain, whether it's resin or HDF or MDF, and some of them are pre-colored and some of them are blank. Very few places can you pick up cheaply nice incidental furniture. There's some really nice resin stuff out there, but if you want to fill something like the foreground wall, which is huge, beautiful, but trying to fill every shop with its own unique set of stuff in resin is going to cost you a fortune. Yeah. Whereas these are relatively cheap. They're very robust. You can bounce bricks off this. It's not HIPS. It's not hard plastic. It's more like the PVC sort of stuff with good detail in it, but really robust. So, and it's all pre-built when you get it.
I really like this one. I'd really like an option where I could just get loads and loads of clothes racks.
But you can't. The way they've done the terrain crates in the past is either a bundle where you get like a shop bundle or a dungeon bundle, or they do them as individual packets where you can pick up the incidentals you need.
Because if I could get loads and loads of clothes rails, I could set up like a hipster store. Oh, that'd be awesome.
You go full TK Maxx.
No, like a hipster one, like where they've got the clothes here, and then they've got a coffee shop sort of bit here, right in the middle of it, and over there you're getting cheese toasties that costs 10 quid, right, on a wooden platter, and then you eat it, and then you can be browsing at the same time. Oh, it'd be awesome.
Like one step away from fresh garbage in Belfast.
Yeah, exactly. That's
with
sort of thing.
The unusual smell of incense burning.
Yeah, any clothes you buy smell of bacon.
Yes, they do.
It's the added advantage.
I was going to say one of my favorite things about that was something I spotted within that mall set, and it's that that row of seating. And that's the kind of seating you see in airports.
Yes.
And I'd love to get like a whole bunch of that and set up like a proper big airport scenario where you've got like the last plane ready to leave the land or whatever, because the zombies are attacking or something, and you've got to rush through it to get to the plane before it blows up. Well, not blows up.
Or you're in the airport terminal and you have 6 hours to wait for your flight, and you have to try and find the one seat that's comfortable enough to sleep on.
I've slept over in Dublin Airport before, and it is not easy. So.
I hate those seats.
No, nobody sleeps. If you want to sleep, you sleep on the floor. You don't use the seats. Seats are madness. But this is only a surface look at what's coming, because they did a, I want to say, war-torn city, and they also did a abandoned townhouse, or where you've got big 4-poster beds, large leatherback chairs, huge dressers full of various items, libraries, that sort of thing. Because I've seen bolt action train set being advertised this week from Warlord, which I'm fairly certain is some of the new Train Crate 2 sets from Mantic. So I think they may have just bought in on that as well to supply it. So I'm not sure when everything comes out from Mantic, if they're staggering the release of some of this Train Crate stuff. I guess we'll find out in the weekend. But some of the stuff that hasn't been shown here, you can find on Warlord's page for bolt action at the moment. So it's really nice, especially for World War II players who are looking to do the defense of Berlin or Stalingrad, that sort of thing. Being able to put out some barricades made from furniture ripped out of period-esque buildings is excellent, rather than just always having piles of rubble. So bring out Granddad's favorite chair, put it in there.
Sweet. Well, chaps, that brings us to the end of the news. We're going to start edging towards Kickstarters. Jerry, I believe you were talking to the Fragging Unicorns guys about their new Kickstarter.
I was indeed. I was talking to Opti about who they are and their plans for the Gangs of the Undercity Kickstarter.
Did you win one of our prizes? Find out on our prize claim center over at OnTableTop.com. Here we list all our previous prizes and those who have won. If you see your username, fill out the form to claim your prize. All prizes must be claimed within 30 days.
Hello, folks. Today I'm joined by Opti from Fragging Unicorns, a new company on the scene, who's going to be having a bit of a chat to us about their upcoming plans and where they're going with their anticipated Gangs of the Undercity game.
Hey.
So, Opti, pleasure to have you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
I think first things first, tell us a bit about yourself. New, fresh. People haven't even had the chance to rub the worn smell off you yet. So.
That's right. And they won't have that chance because all the cons that have been canceled this summer. But yeah, we're myself. Been a long time, lifelong gamer. Started doing some freelance work for Shadowrun RPG and Earth Dawn and a couple other RPG gigs. I did some game development on Shadowrun Anarchy and Shadowrun 6th edition. But behind the scenes, one of the reasons I actually got into freelancing for Shadowrun was because I was waiting on a game that was promised back in 2012 called Sprawlgangers. And that was at the height of right before Warhammer Fantasy took a dive and left us. Which was
I remember that time. Yeah,
it was a severe blow to me, and I was angry at GW. I was angry that the garage full of wood elves that I had recently purchased were not going to get used as much as I wanted them to. So I decided to throw all my weight behind this new Sprawlgangers game, this Shadowrun miniatures tabletop game that was going to come out this year. And then it just never happened. It never came out. And here we are 8 years later, and the game's still not out. And after freelancing for Shadowrun and getting some contacts in the industry, I thought, I think we can do this. I was wrong. I should not have thought that we could do this, but we did it anyway. On no budget. We're not a professional company. We're just breaking in. Everything that we're doing, everything that we're doing is either freelance or volunteers. So we don't have anybody on staff. Nobody's taking a salary. We're just trying to see what we can do with the most anarchistic game company we can.
Some sort of narco-singlistic commune.
That's absolutely. If we were all living near each other, then that would be correct. But I'm not sure it's a commune if we can't actually see each other.
So Fragging Unicorns then has come together with the idea of bringing about essentially a fantasy genre come cyberpunk meld, so that Shadowrun style of game or style of setting where you've got.
Yeah, I think it would be a mistake to not point out that this is similar to Shadowrun in many respects. The lore itself is quite different, but yeah, at the very end of it, you have a cyberpunk future with fantasy elements to it. So yeah, if you're familiar with Shadowrun and if you like Shadowrun, this is going to be a very comfortable place for you to be. But the lore and the details and the specifics, and even the kind of game, the kind of world that this game is set in, is going to be quite different. Yeah.
So, at the moment, you're gearing up towards launching Gangs of the Undercity as a Kickstarter, and this will be a gang-based miniature skirmish game. But this isn't your only plan for Gangs of the Undercity or Neo Babylon, the world's genre. You are planning on expanding that in various directions.
Yeah, the role-playing game that is set in this same universe is being developed concurrently to Gangs of the Undercity. So we're actually in an alpha game test for that as well, and that's moving forward quite quickly. We thought if the quarantine continues very much longer, we might put this one on the rush. See if we can't get an RPG, which is far easier to get to people's hands than a miniatures game.
Very true.
So we have plans to expand the minis game once the initial Kickstarter happens, and we have plans for an RPG or two to follow down the road. So we're not just a minis game company. We are a gaming company primarily focused on minis and RPG.
Yeah. So if we have a look at one of your latest newsletters, which I think is a fascinating one to dip into. It's worth popping onto this website if you haven't been here, by the way, folks, because there's fairly regular updates. There hasn't been a month gone by where we haven't seen some updates come out, and as we gradually approach that sort of July time frame for the Kickstarter, we're starting to see it become more and more realized. So we've seen the first of the sort of.
You guys are mentioned in the last one as well.
We are, yeah. You can't get rid of us. Although that was yourself and Apathy playing through a game.
Yeah.
But you can see some of the fantastic pro-painted prototype miniatures coming through now, because up until this point we've only really seen the renders.
Right.
And it's really nice seeing. So did these just go out to friends, or were there specific pro painters or Twitch streamers that you really wanted to get involved with this, or was this part of the ever expanding narco-syndicate commune where people knew these were coming and wanted to get their hands on them?
No, unfortunately, none of our narco commune are pro painters. We do have some of them. You can see on the bottom there, was painted by one of my local buddies who's in my local gaming group. And the poor quality of the pics is my fault. I don't have a real nice setup while I'm at home. But we got the renders, and the renders look amazing. And frankly, I'll be honest, I wasn't quite sure if we were going to be able to pull off the end result looking the same, as well as the renders did. So when I got the medals, I was like, well, I mean, they're medals. I can't see the end result in mind, so I thought I'm gonna send these to some of the best painters I can, and see if the detail matches up to the renders. And so I did a couple of things. I asked a couple of friends. I had a couple of people in mind that I thought were going to be really good. Brush for Hire was one of them. That I thought were going to be great. I asked some friends who were in the industry, like who they thought, and then I set up on Twitter and I said, hey, who are your favorite people that you like to watch on Twitch? Because I figured it'd be pretty cool to have people painting our minis while people watch. So they got sent out. We sent out, I think, 14 different minis, and these are the first two that we got back. This is Sparrow is painted by Maharun, and Domino there below is painted by Brush for Hire, and you can find their information there and watch them paint minis. They're both great. But yeah, and they came out when I got the pics and when I got the minis back, I was just absolutely blown away by how much detail they were both able to get in there, and how well the minis themselves held up to the renders. So like I'm just absolutely over the moon, because one of the things we decided when we realized that there wasn't going to be any sort of Shadowrun minis game was, even though their Shadowrun minis existed, they were not of a pro quality. And I don't mean that as a slam. It's just that as a gamer myself, and as somebody who has taken the time and put in the effort to really make my minis look as nice as I can.
Yeah,
that's something that we really wanted to say. Like, these are something that anybody can paint, but if somebody who was a pro, somebody who really wants to take their hobby to the next level, these minis are going to allow you to do that. That was one of my design goals with the entire thing from the very beginning.
And it really has come through, specifically that it is a labor of love from a group, a tight community of you really trying to get the best that you can out. Because every bit I've seen so far, whether it's the artwork or the renders or now these miniatures, are top quality. And if you were to put those down in front of somebody, they wouldn't go, "Oh, I think that's been done by a group of friends on goodwill and a shoestring," because they easily stand up to the vast majority of the modern miniature sculpts that you see, and that comes through.
And one of the things that, if I may just take a minute to expound, is good quality things are expensive. They're not the kind of thing that you can go half-assed at. And this is why Fragging Unicorns Games exists, essentially, is being a part of the industry and seeing how things get done within gaming industries, is that they cut corners and they try to undercut money every possible place they can, because ultimately it's what I've discovered is it's about the bottom dollar. All they care about is money, and we are not coming at this from a money perspective. We're coming at this from a fan perspective, somebody who wants to have fun and remembers, back in the 80s and 90s when stuff was coming out that was just bonkers. It was just crazy. And it wasn't to sell something. It was just because somebody somewhere thought, like, this is going to be friggin' fun. Like, we're gonna have fun with this. We're gonna do what we want, what we want to see on the table. And that's what Fragging Unicorns Games is. We don't have to chase the money. Well, I mean, it would be nice to get money, but we're not chasing it. We're doing what we want. We're doing what we think is going to be fun, and we're trying to treat people nice along the way. Being a freelancer, I can speak from firsthand. Freelance pay is not great, and you're at the mercy of whatever IP you're working from. So if you really like Star Wars, or if you really like Legend of the Five Rings, or if you really like Shadowrun, you're going to want to write in that world. You're going to want to participate in it, and you're going to take really bad pay when you get paid at all, and it's just kind of a mess. And with Fragging Unicorns Games, we decided we're just not going to play that game. So every time we've had to hire a freelancer, we've given them the option: do you want a piece of the end result? Do you want some of the profits that we're all going to get? Or do you want to get your freelance rate, and we're going to pay them whatever freelance rate they set? We're not going to try to haggle. We're just going to accept their freelance rate, and we're going to give it to them half up front and half when the product. Now, that has put us in a weird financial place. That's not cheap, but we are committed to doing the best we can to everyone we can. And I think that makes us pretty different from everybody else in the industry. As far as I've been
really
able to
is.
see.
You've turned up like George, and you've told people that essentially, do you want to take your percentage points of the gross at the end of Star Wars, or do you want to just take the lower base rate now? Which is fascinating in itself. If people want to get involved, if people want to jump on board this bandwagon, where can they go to find out more? So is the Fragging Unicorns website their one-stop shop, or is there other places?
All the links should be there in various places, especially if you sign up for the newsletter, or if you sign up for our, let me see, I don't think it's here, but if you go through the dev journals, you can find a link to sign up for the playtest, and that will give you access to the Discord server. But you could also reach out to me on Twitter at Fraggin, no G, Fraggin Unicorns, or on Facebook. Send me a message if you want to be involved, if you've got some skills, or if you just want to, soak in the majesty of a game company that doesn't know what they're doing but really loves people. You just reach out and you could be a part of it.
Oh, I think that sounds fantastic. A lot of game companies could really do with taking that advice on board and running with that, I feel.
I wish they would. I wish Frag and Unicorns games didn't have to exist.
Yeah.
I wish everybody would do it for me so I could just enjoy so that I could stop doing game dev stuff and just play wonderful games. But
well,
we're committed now.
That's just how these things go. It's been fascinating talking to you and seeing the direction that you are coming from to try and get Gangs of the Undercity into people's hands, and hopefully the community will embrace your rarefied type of madness and run with it as well, because it really is an 80s/90s style of approach to gameplay. It reminds me very much of the Cyberpunks, the White Wolves, and the various game design and game publishers that we had then before everything became a bit more, as you say, bottom dollar. And the world that you're starting to develop is truly fascinating, as well as the gameplay itself.
Thanks.
So it's been a pleasure speaking to you. It won't be the last time. If people have any questions, drop them below and I'll make sure that Opti gets them, and hopefully we'll get an answer. Any of those details, the Twitter and the like, will be in the show notes below this video, so you can just pop in there and start clicking buttons to your heart's content, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
There we go. So fascinating to see where they've just gone. We're never going to see this game ourselves, so let's put together a company and a bunch of friends and let's make this happen. Fantastic.
Cool.
We should see more of that, please.
Cool way to go about it. If it doesn't exist, make it.
Make it.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, we check out the Kickstarter now that it's up and running.
We can do. It's going very, very well as well for them. They've already
gangbusters.
Yeah, they've already bust through their funding goal, and they're moving up towards the very end, sort of the stretch goals they had got planned as well, which is pretty cool. So,
well, I dare say there'll be more coming.
Yeah, the sort of core of the Kickstarter is that you get that you get a 2-player starter set to begin with, and it comes with the 2 gangs that can either be done as the sort of in-law gangs from the game. So you've got the Valkyries there and the Burning Skulls, or you can just decide to try and make it your entirely new warband based on whatever you like, and just rename the characters and use them however you want, which is very cool. And then you can either get, I think, as part of this, you can either get the sort of basic starter set and then a bunch of extra stuff, or you can get a slightly more enhanced and nuanced one, which comes with things like dice and tape measure and that kind of thing. 2 flavors of rulebook in there as well, and then some really fun sort of additional options too. Like they talked about the idea of doing a whole new set of terrain, which is done alongside the guys at Death Ray Designs. So that's on the way. But they've also got some pledges for a little bit of extra money, where you can either get your own miniature created based on your ideas and your sort of design thinking and stuff, or you can pick up like an entire gang done the way you want as well, which is pretty insane. Very, very cool indeed. If you want to, put your stamp on the world of Gangs of the Undercity, and obviously have
playing
something
around
very,
in
very
Neo
unique.
Babylon to the way you want to go. So whether
The
you want to
rulebook
have a
looks nice, fella. Sorry to interrupt, but it was just when it popped up there, because like a lot of games, new games come out, they're very bland looking rulebooks. This one looks swish.
They've spent an awful lot of time and effort on this, and it is essentially, like Opti was saying in the interview, that this is something they've been doing on the sidelines while doing their own jobs. So it's not like there's a design house running this. It's literally been built from the base up by just fans who really wanted to see it come to fruition. And you can see things like the Valkyries and the Flaming Skulls there, but the stretch goals push into some of the things like the law something or other, essentially their police force for Neo Babylon, and they've got other ways they can go from there, because the gang building mechanics in Gangs of the Undercity is fairly comprehensive. So with the exception of the Valkyr gang, which is strictly racist elves who don't like anybody else in it, a lot of the other gangs can mix, so you can have elves, dwarves, Yet and humans, whatever you want, mixed in a variety of ways. So there's a lot of scope in there depending on the gang you want to play and the style of game you want to have, whether it's very magic heavy or very magic light, and just go for all the tech and do the damage.
With them doing it sort of part-time with jobs and stuff, it's probably actually an advantage to them because they've had the time then to just keep battering at it and not have to rush it and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the way if you're working for a company and there's a release schedule and it's all placed in stone and we have to have this done by this time and this done by that time, you can start to maybe skip some stuff. But like when you're doing it and it's not your source of income, you have the extra time to sit and think about it and craft bits and pieces.
That's it. Because it has been such a labor of love, they've chosen to go for the two main gangs, and then the stretch goals were, I'm not going to say limited, because I don't think they expected to blast through them in a couple of days. You'd have to really power on down
there. There are a lot of different elements and sort of different ways you can pledge to get involved in this one. So.
Yeah, depending on how much you want to spend, whether it's just a gang and a rule book, or you want to have everything plus the dogs. But yeah, the idea was to focus on getting the game out there and then getting the initial war bands, because potentially, although
there you go,
they have sculpts for them. Lawjack knew they had a name. Despite having the gangs and their own aesthetic, there are a lot of other miniatures out there that would do the job if you can just get the rule book and then go, right, well, this is what I'm going to use until something comes along that will replace it. So it's been a very interesting in seeing how they've chose to develop it and make sure that what they release isn't rushed to get to release. So it's a very solid rule set that they've been constantly tweaking over time. So we have 2 Let's Plays up on the site for it. But even those, I mean, between filming the initial sort of round breakdown where myself and Opti went through it, and then coming to film the first Let's Play, there've been rules amendments, which is why the round breakdown never went out, because it was like, well, this has been changed and this has been changed, but this is where we're going now. So it's very much been a living process. They're trying to refine it and make it as solid a robust a rule set while still retaining their vision for Neo Babylon and the gangs of the Undercity.
Cool. I've still got plenty of days to go.
Yep, still loads of time left on the campaign for you to go and check it out. So yeah, there'll be sort of 29 days-ish for you to go and check this out and sort of dive into it. There's going to be...
Sorry, the Let's Plays that you mentioned then, these are the ones that were done via Tabletop Simulator then?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you go and check our YouTube channel and just search for Gangs of the Undercity, they should pop up.
You'll find it there, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's one which was done way back early during their sort of alpha development stage, where they sort of just played it themselves between 2 of the designers, and then we have 2 with Jerry and Opti sitting down to play the game as well, which are sort of the more up-to-date versions of it as well. So go and check those out.
Next up, gents, because we're knee deep, we're neck deep in Kickstarters now. We've opened that kind of words.
With sci-fi dwarves, you might even be completely submerged. Ha ha ha! Good segue.
Oh.
So yeah, so this is the next
Can't
Kickstarter.
Believe you thought of that joke so quickly.
Reads it off the script. Okay. So this is the Sci-Fi Dwarves Kickstarter from the folks at Macrocosm. People might remember Macrocosm from way back in the day when they did their Amazing Balls, which were a funny aside to those people who wanted to make entire Kings of Art war armies out of balls.
Just to clarify, does people understand that? We were at Salute one year, and this guy called us over and says, "Do you want to see my balls?" And one went, "Absolutely, I want to see your balls." So before we knew it, we were knee deep in his balls, looking at them. And they turned out to be really, really fun-looking balls at that.
They did,
little demon faces and monsters.
They were wonderful. Yeah.
So I just thought I'd clarify that. And now we're going to see what?
We're going to see stunty bits. So this is a new set of white metal sci-fi dwarves for you to use in whatever war games take your fancy. They've got a whole bunch of sort of new models that they've been working on for a little while, bring them together into a full army there. So you've got things like the command team. They've basically put together everything you would ever need to make an army of sci-fi dwarves on the tabletop. So you got things like the command team, the basic squad, your trooper squads, bikers. There's a bunch of heavy weapons as well that they've been working on too, which is very cool. And you can either dive in and pick this up as a massive bundle in of itself, which contains basically every miniature you could ever want, or you can buy individual elements of this and see how it goes together. Like, for example, with the characters there, with the Witch Hunter and the Psyker too. So yeah, a very cool sort of old hammer, sort of retro style army, which I thought was very awesome, especially if you're pining for the fjords full of squats.
So there's no game for this. This is a counts-as type army that you can buy in.
More or less, although they do have a game. I think Macrocosm does have a game, but I can't remember the name of it.
I want to say Panzerfaust.
Is it Panzerfaust? Or is the game just called Macrocosm? I can't remember. But anyway, there is some rule sets out there for some stuff they've done in the past, which had sort of like sci-fi dwarves in it themselves. But you could use these for a whole bunch of other stuff. So say you wanted to play Warpath, for example, you could use it for that, which is very cool.
Loving this.
They're one of the add-ons that you can get. Yeah, so.
Because there's like a counts-as army in the office that I love that we did for Imperial Guard. John did a cracking job.
The Personians,
and the Cav units in that are great. So a bit of Cav mixed in with this would be sweet.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, this is all done sort of by the Macrocosm team, who have been sculpting for a really long time now, which is very cool. And they're very dedicated to the hobby and very dedicated to their craft. They even teamed up with Ramshackle Games for this particular Kickstarter, where the tank that you see as part of this force is actually one of those Ramshackle vehicles. So if you know Ramshackle for their post-apocalyptic work, they've actually teamed up with them to create that, which is very cool. So.
You've got me curious now about this rule set stuff. Who's this? What company is this coming out?
Macrocosm. You should be able to click on that, and it might tell you it might take you to their website.
Mike, here we go.
I'm fairly sure they did do a sci-fi.
They do lots of different stuff.
Oh yeah,
yeah, they do. Yeah,
their Viking/Norman dwarves are particularly nice. Yeah. That's just me.
Where do I go for those?
Dwarves at arms. There you go. Crusader, Norman, and Vikings.
Detour, but going to be totally worth it.
Some people may recognize some of them as being from the Viking TV series. He's a very Ragnar-looking fellow kicking around.
Ragnar's crew would be there. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
He is a fan. When he's not doing monstrous balls, he is a fan of his stunted fellows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still no the wiser. There might be rules, but I don't know where to look. Just look at the amount of stuff.
I think it's quite literally called Macrocosm. If you click on Macrocosm Sci-Fi further down the list, there we go. I swear there was a game for this.
You never know. We'll have
never
to
mind. Never mind. Yeah.
I smell an Indie of the Week coming up at some point. We'll delve into that.
Check that out. Yeah. Cool. So check that one out. 15 days left on that Kickstarter. Go and have a look at it if you like your sci-fi stuff, and stunties in particular. Next, we're moving over to something a bit more fantastical, and that is Heresy Lab, who are working on a new set of miniatures for their Citizens of Faith and Honor collection. They're sort of Citizens of the Old World range. Now, Heresy Lab do a lot of work in both the sci-fi field and the fantasy field, but for the fantasy side of things, they tend to create a lot of miniatures for the Ninth Age. For those people who don't really know about the Ninth Age, that's the sort of community-led spiritual successor to Warhammer Fantasy Battles. That obviously people will know sort of came to an end with 8th edition, and they sort of stepped in and decided to try and make their new own version of it.
Look at this.
So a lot of
that's well funded too.
It is too, yeah. So this is a selection of miniatures that are very much old world inspired, but can obviously be taken to be used in historical games as well if you were so desired as well. So if you like things like Mordheim, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, these are miniatures which are all very much tailored towards you. The focus of the Kickstarter for the and the Faith and Honor one that they're doing right now is on 2 new warbands of miniatures. So you've got the Order of the Flaming Lees.
Look at these.
Yep. And the Templars of the Flame, which we'll see in a second as well, which are very cool.
Is this metal?
No, that'd be resin.
I believe they're resin, yes.
Unless they've got a metal version. They generally cast in resin.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So this is a couple of sets that would be really, really good if you're doing things like Witch Hunter warbands, for example, or maybe if you're going to be doing things that are more focused on the idea of the Sisters of Sigmar from the old Mordheim game. Then you've got some really awesome ways to build up a sort of Sigmarite cult to use on the tabletop. I've already spied quite a few of these miniatures, as well as their Citizens of the Old World, which are from their previous campaigns, which would be absolutely brilliant for you to use as characters in your Warhammer Fantasy roleplay games, because they kind of match up with all the different career classes and that kind of thing, which is very cool. But yeah, they're offering either these as physical miniatures to the people that pledge for it, so you can pledge and just get the resin miniatures in your hands to use as you see fit. Just get painting and they're ready to go. Or you can get them as STL files as well. So you can get them to be 3D printed, which is something they've done in the past with a lot of their sci-fi stuff. You could effectively just pledge to get everything in STL file form and then print it off at home. And as we know from Warren talking about it quite often, 3D printing is definitely becoming more and more of a thing right now.
That's because it's the shit. 3D printing is the shit.
But yeah, loads of stuff obviously unlocked for this one. Again, very well funded from the guys at Heresy Lab. They do some stunning work, and as you can see, the miniatures turn out looking absolutely beautiful. Once they've had a layer of paint on them as well. Very cool miniatures. As someone who is a massive fan of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, I definitely keep looking at this range and going, "Ooh, that'd be a cool character. That'd be a cool character." They just need to do a Dwarf Slayer so that I can use it for my character in Warhammer Fantasy right now. That'd be cool. But yeah,
it's one way of doing it. Certainly, he's gone wrong. That Burgermeister.
Yeah,
it's interesting that they've gone with essentially a Bretonian warband as one of the two, because obviously I don't think Bretonian got a warband officially for Mordheim.
No,
so
they didn't. It was
nice.
one of the fan-made ones, I think.
Yeah. So it's nice to see that rather than just trying to retread existing ground, essentially, that they've gone, well, you know what, we can do this.
Oh, I like that.
Have a massive chicken-looking knight.
Here, do you know that monkey there? That looks like the monkey from. Oh, it's not even a monkey, but Evolution. Do you know the scary monkey creatures that come out at the end? They're evolved.
Yeah,
that looks just like one of them.
I think that's David Duchovny you're thinking of.
But yeah, if you wanted to make an Arabic character, for
but...
example, you've got that option there too.
Yeah.
Look at this hothead. Wow.
Yeah,
another joke there, Ben. Read on the script, obviously.
Yes.
A very, very cool Kickstarter. Definitely worth checking out. If you like your fantasy side of things, and if you're playing things like Ninth Age, which I know people talk about quite a lot right now. A lot of people are playing Ninth Age. So go and check that out as well. We'll have a link to maybe that rule set too in the comments, in the sort of show notes down below. So check that out.
Swish.
Cool in the gang.
What's up next?
So the final Kickstarter we're going to be looking at is from Privateer Press, and this one came out after their keynote speech that they did towards the end of last week. And this is for a new sort of standalone expansion to Riot Quest. So Riot Quest is their sort of miniature board game where you make up a crew of adventurers and sort of pilferers and thieves and vagabonds and mercenaries based within the world of War Machine and Hordes, but sort of in the distant future of that world of Immoren. And you take to the board to loot it for as much as you can and bash up your opponents in proper over-the-top comic heroic style. The new set, which is called Wintertime Wasteland, as I say, is a standalone expansion, so it completely works with everything that has existed before for Riot Quest, but it kind of gives things a little bit of a new spin, throws in some new mechanics, throws in a whole range of new characters for you to play as well. One box set will get you enough for one player to play, but you can also pledge for options to get 2 box sets so that you can have a deeper degree of characters to choose from, as well as all the different range that already exists for Riot Quest, which is sort of now into the sort of 30 or 40 figures I think they've done now for the game, which is pretty cool. Some of the new things they've sort of added into the mix here with this one as well. Obviously, for those people who may be more familiar with Riot Quest, they have done things like they've added new legendary Riot gear for you to pick up in the arena, which makes you slightly more super powered. Think kind of like a video game pickup sort of running around the battlefield trying to pick up new stuff and use it. And they've also included the idea of tag team heroes. So they're heroes that work together in order to be more effective on the tabletop, which is very cool. One of the things they've actually recently done, and it is something which is also included within the rules of Riot Quest and what they've done with Wintertime Wonderland, is that they've come up with these things called boss encounters. So instead of you just being between 2 to 4 players playing out on the same map, trying to vie for control of the loot and all that kind of thing, you can instead do it where all 4 players pick a smaller group of characters and then go up against one big character. Which in the case of the latest expansion, what they've talked about was a massive, huge warjack being ridden around by a goblin, as is the way.
Nice.
There's some very cool stuff there.
Let's see if we can dig something out of the video here. See if we can get some close-ups or anything.
See your Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Dwarf Berserker you're looking for, Ben. I think you may find him in this in Shivers.
Oh, here we go. There we go.
It's small, it's hairy, it looks insane.
Because I'm looking for something to try and show people the actual board layout. There you go.
Yeah, so it's all sort of like a hex-based thing. A lot of it's driven by action cards and dice. It's very much kind of like when Games Workshop looked to do things like Shadespire, and they were trying to get people to play their game worlds, but in a smaller fashion. Riot Quest was effectively Privateer Press's sort of dive into that kind of same market. And it's the idea of taking characters that are both familiar and slightly different and new from the worlds of War Machine and Hordes, and then putting together fun little warbands for you to use on the tabletop and play out the game. And then you could potentially take these and use them in your role-playing games and that kind of thing going forward as well. Because they are planning to bring back the Iron Kingdoms RPG under the 5e banner in the future. So, yeah. And as I say, it's something they've been adding to over the years, well, especially the last year or so, because they came up with the original core set, and then they've also been looking at adding basically new characters in more or less every 3 months or so. So
I think Justin was looking at some of them recently.
Yeah, we've done a couple of unboxings of some of the miniatures where we looked in a little bit more depth at them. So, yeah. Cool.
Fabulous stuff. I just wanted to give people a quick look, because sometimes just looking at the Kickstarter page itself, it's a bit hard to grasp what a game actually, how it portrays itself and plays. So they also have a full tutorial up there. Full tutorial if you're interested, embedded on the Kickstarter.
Something very important on Kickstarters nowadays, if you've got a game that you want to, get out to people, make sure you've got a video of it.
Oh, look at that. Well funded.
There's your Dwarf Berserker there, right, very front left. I know technically you might say it's not a dwarf, but he's about the right size. He looks like a lunatic.
I mean, he's stunty, so yeah. Right.
He is scary. Yeah. Totally in on that, Ben.
His legs akimbo, coming at you like Cleopatra.
Right. Oh, it's much shorter. Like by the time you're seeing this, 6 days.
Yeah, 6 days left of this one. Obviously, we didn't have a weekender last week, so good to get this one in here so you can get a last week look at Riot Quest if you want to go and check it out for yourself.
Cool. Right, chappies. That brings us to the end of the show. Remember, if you're not a cultist, you can come on over and try Cult of Games free of charge for 30 days. So you can join in with all the shenanigans we get up to on our XLBS show on a Sunday. If you've enjoyed this show, please share it around on your Facebooks, your Twitters, your Reddits, I don't know, your Dick Docs, whatever the things are called these days. It's far too many to keep track of these days.
It's TikTok.
Oh, TikTok, that's the one. I don't
think you can share. Never mind.
Yeah.
Face page,
all that goodness. And remember to go and get your comments in on those weekenders for the Indomitus thing, because this is your last chance. We're going to pick a winner next week. We're also going to pick a winner for that 50 quid voucher. So go and do that as well. And remember to comment, sub, and like for the prize that we have up this week, which is the juicy
Team
World
Yankee.
War III set. Oh, it's looking good. Right. Until next week, happy gaming.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.